My name is Reggie White. I'm an addict, and precisely, I smoked a whole lot of cocaine, which got me into the room. I smoked a lot, thought I was not an alcoholic. I drank a lot, I smoked a lot, I did some of everything. And I wanted to invite me out, and I'm heading into dangerous ground here today. Like I was talking before the meeting, right? And I was explaining that what I try to do, a guy like me, I relapsed so many. I had so many bad times and hard times, and I don't want to go back there. That I really try to really stay in God's will today and out of my own will. So I don't talk on subjects a lot of times. I like to tell my story, which is maybe a bit of a failing, but today I'm going to talk about reading, which means I'm going to give a lot of my experience and a lot of my opinions. And what I want to talk about is how I relapsed. I want to talk about how it was when I got here at first, how I relapsed, how it is trying to get back, and some of the experiences in relapses as a serial relapser, in hopes that somebody, yeah, we didn't get a chance to ask for newcomers, but I'm hoping that there's some people in here that maybe can hear something that can maybe keep them here another 24 hours. And see, I came to you first on February 7th of 1987. I walked into the lobby of the Salvation Army Harbor Light Center. I have five brothers, and we all drank and used together. As a matter of fact, we all smoked a lot of cocaine together. So much so that before a couple of years before I got to you guys, my mom almost died. You know, she had a nervous breakdown and almost died due to all of us drinking and smoking, using in her house. And came here. I didn't know I was following two of my brothers. That was the interesting part. Ronald and Ralph came here before me. First, Ronald about 7 months before I got here. Then Ralph about 4 or 5 months before I got here. And and um, and I followed them into the Salvation Army Harbor Light Center only because I'd had this girl's car. I left work, and we had left work. I always left work in a suit on payday with and the fellas in the neighborhood were waiting for me because I had a bunch of customers that I worked with, and I would go to the valley here in LA. It's the valley, and then I go in the South Central LA. And so I drove the car. I dropped her off at home. I'm still in my suit. Drove in the South Central LA, and and I got stuck. You know how it is. I went to buy some stuff and take it back to her, but I had to take one before I took it back. I had to test it, right, to see if it was okay. And I ended up being stuck in the car for 2 weeks. And I stank, and I hadn't shaved, showered, brushed my teeth, combed my hair. I hadn't done anything. And so and I had a bunch of people looking for me because I got a bunch of credit. Everybody knew I was good for it, right? And these are a bunch of really dangerous people in South Central LA, and they were all looking for me. And so I tried to reach Ronald because Ronald had told me about this Harbor Light Center place, Salvation Army place, and it kind of was sitting in the back of my head. But then I couldn't reach Ronald, but somehow I don't even know how I reached Ralph, but I reached Ralph, and I just wanted to take the car back to the girl. I was a coward, and a couple of my brothers were left over at this girl's house. We were supposed to be back there partying, and I had the car for 2 weeks anyway. I asked Ralph to take the car back, and he insisted that I go into this Harbor Light place. And so I was sitting in there, and I'm stinking, and they had told me I could sleep for a week, and I'm scared, but they told me nobody could get to me, and I slept for that week, and then I went to that AA meeting, and things started to change for me. And what I like to talk about is how easy everything was that first time around. Everything came real easy to me because it was such a relief not to. If you smoke like I smoke, it was a relief to stop smoking because by that time, because it was fun early on, but by that time, it hadn't been fun for a long time. By that time, I was on a losing streak. I was losing jobs. I'm losing girlfriends. I'm losing cars. I'm losing bank accounts. I'm losing I'm losing self-respect and dignity. I'm about to lose my life because these guys are going to kill me anyway. But now I'm in here safe, and I start going to these meetings, and I start liking these meetings, and then and I didn't realize I come here on a high bottom, right? I come here on a real high bottom because I had a real good work history, and things started to happen for me real fast and real good. And I started to get a really good job. I remember I was going down the 9604 South Figueroa down in South Central LA, and I got I had a sponsor, and I'm doing stuff, and then we start working. Ralph and Ronald and our friend Strange came up with the idea for the Never Too Early Big Book Workshop. I came to you in February of '87. In November of '87, they came up with the idea for the Never Too Early Big Book Workshop. So now, in addition to all the meetings and the dances and the parties and the girls, because I had a couple of girls 13 step me early, and that was a big deal for me because I was, I had to be sure that was because when I get sober the first time, what I'm worried about is what's life gonna be like. When they talk about a choose between an alcoholic death or a spiritual life, they're not easy choices because that other choice, I don't know what a real spiritual life looked like. But a spiritual life started to look real good to me. The girls we were having fun, and we going on parties and picnics. Man, life was easy. Sobriety was easy. When we started Never Too Early Big Book Workshop, we started working those steps, and man, everything was easy. When I first came to you guys, the biggest asset that I had was Ralph and Ronald, not necessarily because they were my brothers and reaching out, helping me, even though they were, but because they were my brothers and they had been getting loaded with me, right? So now, because they're drinking and using with me, and I considered them way worse than I was. So now I'm looking at them and I'm looking at how it's working in their life, right? So I'm here and I'm new and I got my own crew and I'm watching them with Strange and they're riding around in this little yellow car. They never let me ride that car. But anyway, they're riding around in this car and they're going to meetings and I'm going to these same meetings, but I got my own meetings and I got my own crew and I'm doing my own thing. And man, sobriety is just fun and it's easy. And I remember I was taking panels down on Skid Row. I started taking a panel down to the Harbor Light Center and I was taking them to another couple of places down on Skid Row. And I would run into Clancy, right? And Clancy would be talking to me and laughing. And he would be, I didn't know how big he was. And one of the things that stood out, he would say that AA is the only friendly direction. Reggie, sometimes AA is the only friendly direction that a person has. That's how it felt to me. AA was a real friendly direction. And that's how I felt when I'm first coming around, that AA is such a friendly direction. And so now, because I had like I said, I came in on a real high bottom and I started getting jobs really fast and I'm making money. I got this girlfriend real quick and I hurried up and moved in with her and she had a son. And so I got a ready-made family. I'm a better dad than my dad has ever been and life is going real good. And then that guy handpicked me to bring his company back from Atlanta and I'm making all this money, six figures. And I got all these departments and all this stuff. And I'm flying back and forth from Atlanta to LA, man, and life was real easy and life was real good and life it started to get real big for me. And I'm thinking that's the way sobriety is supposed to be, right? Why else would we get sober if we're not supposed to recreate our lives and become respected citizens, get a real good job and help people, get my family together and help them? But see, I forgot about AA. I forgot about AA, right? What I always talk about is don't let the life that AA gave you get in the way of your AA life. What I mean by that, see, I had a sponsor in name only. I'm not calling this guy. I hadn't called him in years. I'm not going to meetings because I'm too busy. I'm not taking the panels down on Skid Row anymore, and I'm certainly not going on panels to prisons anymore. I'm not going to the sober dances, and I'm not going to the sober pick. I'm not doing anything in sobriety anymore. And then when my little girl got sick and misdiagnosed, and they had the whole medical malpractice thing, and my little girl got real sick, and she's getting ready to die. Man, I'm starting to panic. And I remember uh, I even started praying again. See, I had gotten away from AA so cold blooded, guys, and I thought that in my mind, and I don't even think that consciously I was thinking this. It's looking back in the rear view mirror. And so for those of you who've been here, and you don't have to be a relapse to hear this. But for those of you who've been here, I started to think I did this. Somewhere in my subconscious, I started to think it's because, oh, I'm doing this. And I stopped praying because I was always ashamed to pray. So I'm stepping away from God already, right? And And when my little girl got sick, I started praying again. And now, and I remember my mom came and when my little girl was sick, and my mom was, uh, I brought in the big guns. I watched Angie. I was on my way to work. I dropped them off at Cedar Sinai Hospital when I finally said enough of this other hospital. And by the time I got to work, there was a phone call there because there was no cell phone then. But there was a phone call there at my job saying, turn around and go back to the hospital. And I turned around and I rushed right back to the hospital from that job. And I got there just in time. They were intubating my baby. They were putting all the tubes in her to put her out. And I'm looking at her and she waited. It's like she waited till I got there. And I saw the light go out in her eyes as they put her under. And she had her hand out to me. And something in me right there said, my baby's gone, right? Then she's gone. And I carried that guilt for a long time, right? Because I'm thinking, what if it was because I didn't believe? Even in these prayers. And I remember I was crying and I called my mom. I went away by myself and I called my mom and I said, I need you to come to the hospital and I need you to pray for my baby. And my mom came and she prayed and she said, God, give this family strength to walk through whatever you have, whatever you put in front of, whatever you put in front of this family, give us the strength to walk through it. Give us the strength to just make it through whatever it is you're putting in front of us here. And I remember looking there and in my mind, I started cursing my mom out for the first time in my life. I'm cursing her out. Terry don't like when I curse on this, but I'm thinking, what the fuck is she saying? Why isn't she saying, God, save Angie, save the, and I panicked and I started praying, God, take my life, save my daughter, and of course my baby died, medical malpractice. And because my feet weren't trained, because I had stepped away from this fellowship, I had stopped going to meetings. I had stopped talking to a sponsor. I had stopped. I hadn't had, and everybody in AA gathered around, and you guys did absolutely everything you could. See, because we're supposed to live. People lose their kids all the time in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous. And what we do, we know exactly what to get to meetings, get to more meetings, get at the podium and talk till they drag us off of it. What we do is we work with new people. What we do is we go in and we mop floors and we set up chairs and we clean ashtray. We do whatever it is. We sit in the middle of the herd. What we do is we lean into the fellowship. I can do nothing. Lean back, lean out. I totally shut down. And so did my wife, right? At the time, my wife at the time. And right then and there is where you lost me, even though I lasted 11 more months. And I went to the bar and I drank. And so for those of you in here who may be thinking, well, really drinking alcohol is not my problem. Maybe it's just that cocaine or that meth or whatever else. I had always thought that crack was my problem, not alcohol. And I remember I went to that bar and I drank and it came rushing back at me how much of an alcoholic I was. And I drank for 2 weeks and then I saw her in the bar and she gave me that look and I gave her my interview. Do you get high? She said yes. I was off and running, doing what I really wanted to do and what I really knew I couldn't do. And I only did that for 2 weeks. Then it was the anniversary of my baby's death and I took a bunch of pills and committed suicide. Because sometimes relapsing ain't even enough. Sometimes the only answer is checking out. Right? When I'm not spiritually grounded, when I'm not spiritually centered. And see, at that point, I said, me and God, we're done. We're done. I wanted absolutely nothing to do with God. And so now I'm doing that. And I remember when I came to after I took all those pills and I thought I was dead and I thought I'd be looking into the face of God. And instead, it was the first face that I saw. I mean, my brothers, all the other people that loved me. And I was totally ashamed and humiliated. And that's what started off all of the relapse. That's what started off the whole train of relapse. That's when I always talk about how I was a serial relapse. And so what I wanted to do today is I wanted to talk about how I relapsed in the first place, which you just saw. And that was one of the things I'll say about that. People always gave me an excuse for that. And I rolled that. Oh, you relapsed because your daughter died. We understand. There's no excuse for you. Absolutely. I'm here to tell you right here, right now, there's absolutely no, I don't get a pass on that. There's absolutely no excuse for relapse. If I stay spiritually centered and spiritually grounded, if I keep my feet trained on doing the right thing in this program, that's why I can't get away from this. Moved away from this, and I started. The job got to be so important. Some of the times I may start working on this job, and I say, oh, "Okay, I don't have to. I don't have time to go to meetings anymore. I can't go to as many meetings anymore because I got this job." No, sobriety is always important. Or I might say, "Oh, I'm doing this. You know, I have 10 years, I have 20 years, I have 30 years. Once I start, and yes, I do have 10, 20, or 30 years. When I start edging God out of it and start thinking that I'm the one doing it, and make and so I'm relapsing, right? And it take about 5 years for me to 5 or 6 years for me to try to get back to you guys because I'm so devastated and I'm so broken up. And those of you who are serial relapsers, I want to kind of recount some of the things that I did to try to get back to you guys and some of the failed ways that I tried to get back to you guys. Because one, when I talked about earlier, when I talked about Clancy saying that stuff about that AA is the only friendly direction, when I start trying to come back from relapse and AA, all of a sudden stops looking like a friendly direction. I'm a serial relapser. When I'm sitting in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and Cocaine Anonymous, a lot of times I'm sitting around in these rooms and I'm sitting there and I'm listening to people talk about people who are relapsed. Oh, here he goes again. I'll use my name. There goes that Reggie White again. Oh, here he is. He's new again. If he really wanted this thing, he could get it. What are you going to do different this time? Uh, why can't you get this? Why? And I would imagine people are looking at my brothers for all these years. See, like I said, one of the biggest assets I had when I got here were my brothers, Ralph Ronald, and then my brother Rod came here, and they all have like 38 and 39 years right now. And I would sit and I would think that people are looking and saying, why can't he be like his brother? Why, if they're staying sober, why can't he get this thing like them? Um, if he really wanted it, why he could get this stuff like that. And see, and I wanted it so bad, I wanted it more than I wanted to breathe air every time. And it just, but I'm hearing the echoes of voices that I've heard throughout the rooms of people talking about people that relapse. And we got to be so careful in how we talk about our friends in here because we'll say on one hand in the middle of the meeting at the podium, oh, we don't shoot our wounded, but then we'll go around. And maybe I was guilty of some of this too. I don't really even remember. But then we'll go around saying little snipey things about each other. We never know who's listening to that. And we got to be real careful. Sometimes we're the only big book that a person is reading, or the only one that they're remembering, that they're hearing. And, and um, and so I started. I remember when I wanted to come back. I wanted to come back, but I wanted to have my pride and integrity intact because I wanted to go back to Never Too Early Big Book Workshop, but my brothers were in there, right? And so I wanted to at least have a year before I walked in there. That's just me in my head. Like at least if I have a year, I'll have my pride and integrity intact. So that's when I decided to start sneaking back to AA. So I would. They were all in South Central LA, and I'm in West Hollywood, and I'm going to meetings where people don't know me, and I'm going to meetings late so that I don't have to stand up as a newcomer, and I'm leaving meetings early so I don't have to take any tips because I'm ashamed and I'm humiliated. And I remember I would go sit in those meetings, and people might come. I would sit in these strange meetings, and I would sit as far away from people that as I possibly could, and I'd probably have a book open or something like that in front of me to discourage people talking to me because I was ashamed and I would hate that dreaded question that somebody might come up and ask me, hey, are you a newcomer? Or hey, how much time you got? because it felt like, and I'm not saying that this is the case, guys, at all, but it felt like people were asking me that question to judge me. Either if you're new or you have a little amount of time, then that means I could treat you one way, or if you got a lot of time, more than me, I got to treat you another way. And those are like the mental states that now I'm going through as a person that's relapsed, trying to come back to this fellowship, you know, and um and I went through that stuff for a long time. And I remember I would sneak in the meeting. I would always sneak in. I would try to, even when I wasn't late, I would just sneak into some meetings, and I would always keep myself totally isolated away from everybody. So I'm at meetings, but not in meetings. And I always, and it was always uppermost in my mind what you guys thought about me. And, and um and then everybody started giving up on me. Because now I'm starting to do the recovery home, and I'm relapsing over and over and over and over and over again. And now I'm cheating on time, and I'm relapsing, and I'm going to the recovery homes and rehabs. And I'm always voted most likely to stay sober. And I come out of these rehabs, and new friends, if you are in any of these rehabs or sober livings, I need you to really listen to me, because I would go into these rehabs or sober livings, and I would come out, and the first thing I do, I'd be looking for three things. I look for a job, a home, a car, a girl, and sobriety was way down the list. Of course, I said to my in my head I wanted that, but I know what I actually was really, really looking for, and certainly I wasn't looking for God. I certainly wasn't looking for God, and and, and I started to have those periods of pitiful and incomprehensible realization. I remember I came out in my mom's 75th birthday, and my brothers had set up a whole birthday party for her, and my brothers and everybody else in the family. And I show up, and I got a few months of clean and sober, because I'm at this point. I would get out of rehab. Here's a picture of Reggie coming out of rehab. I get out of rehab. I would go to a downtown hotel because I would have to be on GR, right? GR, they would let you get a downtown hotel. They would give you a voucher for one. So I'm staying in these downtown hotels, and they're having me go to these classes so that I could get a job, and then getting an SRO. Because see, I don't want to be around anybody that I know, right? And so now I'm going through that. I'm staying sober. I get a job. I hold on to the job for maybe a paycheck or two, because I'm going to meetings at first. But once I start getting a job, I'm not going to meetings anymore. I don't have time, right? Because I don't have a car. I don't want to go on the bus to meetings at night. And so now I get a couple of paychecks, and I relapse again. I go through that whole cycle, and I'm over and over and over and over and over again. And then that 75th anniversary came, and I came around my family, and they were all so happy to see me. And I go I go in there, and mom, I have a gift for mom and everything. I don't have a car, but I got a gift for mom, and I'm dressed nice and I look good. And my mother is so excited because all of her sons are back together again, her whole family. And then she gives me the car to go pick up my aunt from the airport, her favorite sister-in-law, and from Memphis. And I go to the airport. I'm going to the airport early so that I could be sitting at the arrivals when she come out. And I get to where I'm supposed to make the left turn to go to the airport, and I say I could do a right turn, and I could spend $20 with this girl and just take one, and I could just smoke 20 and spend 20, and I made that right turn, and they didn't get that car back for 3 weeks. And so now the entire family knows who I am, and they know that I'm a relapser. And now I'm totally ashamed, and I'm totally humiliated. And I think that one of them found the car like 3 weeks later. Thank God they had a spare key. And I wasn't around that family for probably more than a year. And that was one of the worst. See, a lot of times the worst things that happen to me end up being the best things that happen to me too. And I'll talk about that a little later. And then that's what started the acceleration of everything. And then my health started to go in the relapse. But when I'm a serial relapser, I don't take care of my health, both physical and mental, and everything started to go. Now I'm have an enlarged prostate, so I can't control my bodily functions anymore. Then I got glaucoma, and now I'm legally blind. And I have glaucoma, 0% vision in my right eye, 30% in my left. And so now I can't work for anybody anymore. All of a sudden, I can no longer work for anybody else, and I'm getting $200 a month plus $200 worth of food stamps, and I'm supplementing that by selling plasma twice a week. And now I become a low. And now I'm a guy who starts walking those streets every day. And now I'm that guy. I'm that guy who I used to look at and say, if I ever get that bad, I'll quit. But now I can't quit, right? Because what else can I possibly do? Health is gone. My mental health is gone. I'm hallucinating. I'm now having mental and visual, audio and visual hallucination, and I'm realizing this. So now I'm knowing I'm going crazy, and I'm thinking I may not be able to make it back, and I'm scared. And now everybody gives up. My mom is the last one to give up on me. A mother is only as happy as their most unhappy child, and she saw fit. And when I became a low bottom drunk, she didn't want to see me out there on the street, so she let me rent a room in her house. And room in her house, she wouldn't look at me or talk to me. You know, my brothers, Rod, Ralph, Ronnie, come in. Hey, Rod, Ralph, Ronnie, and me, she just shake her head, or like she wouldn't talk to me. And in every way that you could possibly. And not only did everybody else give up, that's when um, that's when I'm sitting behind my mom's, and I had that bottle of system along with that book. I pushed 100 times, and there was nothing come out of it but air. And I'm sitting back there, and all of a sudden I gave up. I said, I can't do this anymore. Not that I couldn't drink or use or get high anymore. I said, I can't get sober anymore. Because I tried every possible way that I could to get sober. Going to meetings, getting the buddy, taking myself through the steps. I've done everything that I possibly could except God. To hell with God. I didn't want anything to do with God. And that's when, about a week after I gave up, and when I gave up, it wasn't just symbolic. I walked from behind that garage. I said, I'm not going to hide anymore. It's not like I was really hiding from anybody. I thought I was in my mind, but I knew I was dying. I knew I was going totally crazy, and I didn't think there was any way back. Every single person had given up on me. And when I came out from behind that garage, I just wasn't hiding anymore. And about a week later, that's when my so-called girlfriend stole my mother's car out of her driveway one more time. And that day, my baby brother pushed open the door to that bedroom, and he said, "You have mom's car." I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." He said, "You have to leave my mother's house right now." And that's when I made that one right decision, which was that same rehab I did twice in a 5 year. And I remember I made that call to Rico Cruz, and he told me to go get an assessment. And my mother told me to get off the property, that she never wanted to see me on the property again. And the assessment was for the next day. And I left that house that night, and I remember I wandered and rode the bus around, and I'm picking up cigarette butts off the street because that's the guy I had become. And now, and I remember I snuck back that night because I'm not good at living on the street. I had a choice, actually. I actually had a choice. I had by that time I was on SSI, and I could have waited till that Saturday. That was like on a Monday, I think. I could have waited till that Saturday, and I would have got a check. And I had a friend's house that I could go to and wait it out. I didn't want to do that. Something in me said, "Don't do that." I think this. It felt like if I had done that, I would die. So I snuck back. I snuck back around that same garage where I always snuck to get high. But I snuck back there to just lay there and sleep back behind that. And then my mom and Ralph came walking around the corner and like, oh, let me sleep in that house for 2 days while I go to the assessment one day, that rehab. See, and that was the start of stuff happening. That was the start of at a time when I thought it was the absolute worst day of my life. That was a time when things started to change. It started to change. Without my permission, I didn't think my mom had said she never wanted me on her property again. And when they came around that corner, I thought they were going to be bringing the police. And they brought a reprieve for me just to be in the house those 2 days, so I could get that rehab. And 2 days later, I was walking the grounds of that rehab with my head down because I hadn't looked any of you in the eye. Rico walked up on me and said, you don't have a right to put your head down. God wouldn't have put you through everything he put you through for 16 years to leave you out here like this. I mean, I just reached down and touched him. I said, would you please take me through this? When those words came out of my mouth, something changed. Maybe that was my white light bulb. All of a sudden, I didn't care anymore what people thought about me. I've been walking with my head down thinking that these people, because I've been here twice, and everybody on the staff just knew that I was going to fix over. And I'm worried about what some people on a staff of a rehab. And all of a sudden, I stopped worrying about what anybody was going to say about me or what they thought about me. And I started helping 200 guys in that rehab that day. And thank God that God doesn't need my permission to work in my life. I still was cursing God on a daily basis. And as I started going through all that there, it was like there was a whole psychic change that started happening. And God just started pouring grace on me. And I came out of there. I always like to talk about how I came out of there at 90 days on the third step. And we were on the third step prayer and Never Too Early Big Book Workshop. But it was a little more than that that happened because I came out of there after 90 days. And I remember the first thing I did when I got out, um, because I had my own place. I worked it out where I had a place in a room that I was renting because I wasn't, things had changed. Something just changed. Something had changed to me without my permission. And there was God just pouring grace on me. And I remember I called and asked mom, I told my mom, I said, I'm out of the rehab. Can I please pick up my clothes that I left there in your garage? Mother sound panic. Panic. He said, no, you cannot come over to my house. And she sent my niece and my nephew over to bring my clothes. I was humiliated. But it was okay because my whole reaction to everything way different than it had ever been before. And that was just something changed. Something changed. I started reacting differently to everything. And I got those clothes and I went to that room in San Pedro and that was I got out on a Friday. On Sunday, I said I'm going to be at Never Too Early when they open up to help them set up Never Too Early Big Book Workshop because you always want to go back to your home group, new friends. Get a home group. Get a home group. Get a place where people know you and love you. And early on that Sunday morning, first thing I did is I got up at 5:30 in the morning and I got that first bus from San Pedro all the way down and made it all the way down to Gardena. And I was helping them set up at Never Too Early Big Workshop. And something happened in there that day. I always like to talk about how we were doing that third step prayer. That actually was the next Sunday after we were doing the third step prayer. Something very important happened that day. something that you guys could do for somebody else or that might happen for you, but it was God stepping in for me. One of my brothers, Ralph R. Ronald, talked to this little guy named Angel. My friend Angel had 20 something years of sobriety. I think he had 24 years right then, that day. And he's a friend of mine, a friend of theirs. And Angel came to Never Too Early Big Book Workshop that day. And Angel had not been to Never Too Early Big Book Workshop. Angel told me that for the last 2 years, he had stopped going to meetings. That he had had some stuff happen in his life, and he had just stopped. And he had been hanging out in the bar and waiting to drink. And that day, Angel was at Never Too Early Big Book Workshop, and one of my brothers asked Angel to just take me to a meeting that night. Said Reggie can't drive at night. They didn't tell me this. They told him that. They said Reggie can't drive at night. Maybe you could take him to a meeting. And Angel came to me after the workshop and said, "Hey, you want to go to a meeting tonight?" I said, "Yeah." And we went to a meeting that night. And then Angel asked me to go to a meeting the next night. And then he asked me to go to a meeting the next night. And I just kept saying yes. On Sunday night, we went out to Toluca Lake, the meeting in Burbank. And then Angel said, "We need to start, maybe you could help me start looking for speakers." He asked me to go the next night, and I went. And on that Monday night, we went to the meeting in West Hollywood, the West Hollywood speaker meeting. And then on Tuesday night, we went to Arlington Group. Then on Wednesday night, we went to the meeting that Angel put on in Venice. Then on Thursday night, we went to the meeting that Angel put on in Culver City. Then on Friday night, we went to the meeting in Dickens, which was in the Valley. And on Saturday night, we went. See where I'm going? I could tell you the names of all these meetings that we went to, and we started going to those meetings from that day that I first came out, when I first went to Never Too Early, and I went to those meetings until the pandemic started. That man took me to a meeting every single night. And if that man had not taken me to those meetings every single night, I might not be sitting here with you. So when you guys think that maybe I don't need to be putting somebody in my car, that man was doing God's work. Without him, I might not be sitting here right now. And I might just still be a serial relapser. But then the next week we start, and something happened different, new friends. When I went to those meetings, I used to go to those meetings. If there's anybody out here wondering, why can't I stop relapsing and why can't I get that thing? I started to change everything about how I went to. At every one of those meetings we went to, I started going to every single I used to go to meetings and I would sit in the corner somewhere and I would sit to myself and I wouldn't talk to anybody and I was ashamed. I was humiliated. God touched me and took that away from me where I was concerned about what you thought about me. And I started going to everybody in that meeting, shaking their hands, saying, "I'm Reggie White. I'm Reggie White. What's your name?" Whoever it was, didn't matter. I didn't ask people about time. I just went in there and introduced myself to people. And I started going, I would take cookies, I would take donuts, I would take pizza. I didn't have a lot of money, but I didn't have a lot of expenses. See, I'd been smoker broke before. Some of y'all know what smoker broke is. See, I'm not smoker broke now. When I stopped smoking, I'm not broke. And I just start giving back, giving back, giving back. Because the whole time that I was out there, all I did was, and I said, I'm doing everything different this time. Every single thing different this time. And I started to give back from the day that I came out of. The day that I went in that rehab is the day I started giving back. And I haven't stopped since then. I have to. I have a lot to pay. And but what I started to do was I stopped being that person that didn't talk to people, and I started being that person that talked to everybody. And it's amazing what happens when that happens. Now I've become a whole different guy. And I've been talking a long time. Okay. And then the pandemic came. And when the pandemic came, everything stopped and I really started to panic. For 2 weeks, there were absolutely no, now Angel can't take me to any meetings. Now there are no meetings to go to. I didn't have meetings to go to. Never Too Early was not meeting on Sunday anymore. And for 2 weeks, there were absolutely no meetings. And I started to, because for a guy like me, inactivity ain't the way to go. And I'm sitting at my mom's house. I'm talking to Ralph. I'm sitting there talking to Ralph. I don't remember about what. And then Chris Finley called. And she called Ralph and she talked about how they had this thing called Zoom, on her job. And she said, maybe we could do Never Too Early on Zoom. Her and Ralph started working out the details on how to do that. And when we decided to do that, and I said, well, how are we going to let people know? And I said, that's my commitment. I can let people know about how to get to Never Too Early on Zoom. And from starting on letting people know about Never Too Early on Zoom, I said, how are they going to know about all the other meetings on Zoom? And I started to send meetings out all over the world on Zoom, to people all over the world. And I started that commitment 2 weeks into the pandemic, and have never stopped. Never stopped. I think that what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to give, because I know how hard it is. And I work with a lot of people that relapse. And and sometimes when you're in that tunnel, when you're in that relapse tunnel that's so long and so dark and so scary and so hopeless, it seems like there's never going to be light at the end of that tunnel. I'm here to tell you that there's light, there's hope. If a guy like me, I had totally lost my health. I totally lost my everything, every mental function that I had, and I was dying. I had totally lost God. I had no connection, absolutely no connection. I totally lost any kind of hope from any person around me that I could ever make it back. Not only not make it back to you guys, but make it back anywhere close to San. And here I am. I'm here to tell you there's hope there. I'm here to tell you that those people, your sons, your daughters, and your brothers, and your cousins, and your employees, don't put it. My friend Chris always says, don't put anybody out of the reach of God. Don't put anybody out of the reach of God. Kind of meandered. I think that what I'm really trying to say is that what I'm hoping I gave was just paint a little bit of a picture of what it looks like to be in that. But sometimes I know it's easy to look at the guys and the girls that are relapsing and to think that it's easy to look at them and say, why can't they just stop doing it? And I'm here to tell you that if they're anything like me, they want to stop doing it way more than you ever want them to stop. Way more. I'm here to tell you that sometime maybe if I just reach out just a little, if I just reach a little, if maybe when I'm going to a meeting that I just put somebody back, maybe what I really want to do is to make sure that Cocaine Anonymous, Alcoholic Anonymous is always in direction. Anyway, Terry, thank you for letting me out talk. I told you it's dangerous to let me get away from God's will and to start talking Reggie's will. My name's Reggie White. I'm an addict. Thank you for allowing me to share.
All right.